The snow fell like ash from a dying sky, coating the highway in a silence so deep it felt sacred. Out there, where the mountains swallowed the horizon and the wind howled like a wounded animal, a lone diner flickered against the storm, its neon sign fighting to stay alive. Midnight Haven. Inside, Sarah Williams stood alone behind the counter, staring at the last $47 she owned. Her breath fogged the window as she watched the snow pile higher, erasing the road that had once brought life to her door. The coffee had gone cold. The jukebox had gone quiet. And the world, the one she and her late husband had built together, was slipping away, one unpaid bill at a time. 7 days. That's all she had before the bank came for everything, but Sarah had something the storm couldn't take: faith. Not the kind you preach, but the kind you live, the belief that kindness still mattered, even when it cost you everything. That night, she whispered a prayer into the empty air, her voice trembling. If there's anything left out there listening, send me a sign. And as if the heavens had heard her, a sound began to rise from beyond the blizzard, faint at first, then louder, until it shook the very windows. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't the wind. It was the growl of engines, 15 of them, tearing through the storm like ghosts of another world. She didn't know it yet, but before the sun rose, the woman with $47 to her name would give away her last meal, and in return, plant the seed of a miracle. The wind screamed through the cracks in the window as Sarah counted her money again, the bills soft and faded from too many desperate hands. She sighed and tucked them beneath the counter beside the foreclosure notice, a cruel reminder of how fast dreams could unravel. Outside, the snow hit the ground in furious waves. The world beyond her window was nothing but white, endless, merciless white. The diner's neon sign flickered weakly, casting the words, "Hot coffee 24/7, into the storm." Robert would have laughed at that, she thought. Always open, come what may. He used to say this diner wasn't just a business, it was a promise. A promise to travelers, to the lost, to anyone who needed warmth when the world turned cold. But Robert was gone now, 2 years buried beneath a simple headstone behind the church in town. Cancer took him in spring, and by winter, the bills began to drown her. Still, Sarah stayed. Because if she left, everything they'd built, every memory, every late-night laugh, would vanish with the snow. She was wiping down the counter when she heard it, a deep, distant rumble, like thunder dragging its chains across the earth. It grew louder, closer, until the diner's windows vibrated. Her first thought was fear. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, strangers in a storm rarely meant good news. Then headlights cut through the white. 1, 2, 15 in total. Motorcycles, they emerged from the blizzard like beasts of iron and smoke. Their riders were wrapped in leather, snow clinging to their jackets like frost on wolves. Sarah's pulse quickened. She'd heard about men like these, Hell's Angels, outlaws, ghosts of the road. The first one to dismount was tall, broad, and carried the kind of silence that made a room shrink. His beard was gray, his eyes cold and tired. The patch on his back confirmed it. Hell's Angels MC'd as he approached the door and paused, his breath fogging the glass. For a long second, they just stared at each other, a lone woman in a dying diner, and a stranger carved from storms. Then he knocked. 3 gentle raps, polite, almost hesitant. Sarah's hand trembled over the lock. She could have turned off the lights, hidden in the back. But instead, she remembered Robert's words. A light for travelers. She opened the door, the cold rushed in like a flood. The man's voice was deep and rough. "Ma'am, I know this ain't much of a welcome, but we're near frozen out there. Roads are shut down 10 miles back. Any chance we could get some coffee and warmth?" Sarah looked past him, 14 more riders, all shivering, snow caked in their beards and boots. They looked dangerous. But they also looked tired. She nodded. "Come in." They filed in, stamping snow from their feet, the smell of gasoline and cold leather filling the air. The leader, the man with the scar, gave a small nod of thanks as they took seats at the booths. "I'm Jake Morrison," he said. "We're from Thunder Ridge. Coming back from a memorial ride. One of our own passed last week." Sarah poured coffee, her hands steady despite her nerves. I'm sorry for your loss. Jake stared into the cup. You ever lose someone who made the world make sense? And when they go, the whole map just disappears? Sarah looked at him, her heart aching. Yes. I have. Silence stretched between them, heavy but honest. Then she did something reckless. She brought out pie. All that was left, cherry and apple, enough for maybe 5 people. Jake frowned. We didn't ask for charity. It's not charity, she said softly. It's human. The men ate in silence at first. But slowly, the diner began to thaw. Laughter, low, cautious, returned. Someone dropped quarters in the old jukebox, and against all odds, it sputtered to life, playing a crackling tune from the 70s. For the first time in months, Sarah's diner felt alive. When morning came, the storm had eased. The sky blushed with pale gold. The men stood, pulling on their jackets. Jake placed a crisp $100 bill on the counter. For the food, he said. And for not slamming the door in our faces. Sarah smiled faintly. You can't buy kindness, Jake. He hesitated, eyes wet. Then I'll just try to repay it. They rode off into the dawn, engines echoing through the valley until they faded to nothing. Sarah stood at the door long after they vanished, the diner quiet again, but the silence felt different. That afternoon, she made one more pot of coffee and sat by the window, staring at the empty road. She didn't know it yet, but that night had changed everything. 2 weeks later, a roar filled the highway again. This time, it wasn't 15 bikes. It was hundreds. The ground trembled as over 200 Hell's Angels poured into the parking lot, chrome shining, flags whipping in the wind. Sarah rushed to the window, her heart thundering. Jake was at the front, smiling for the first time. That he walked in and set an envelope on the counter. You said kindness couldn't be bought, he said. But maybe it can be shared. Sarah opened it. Inside, a check. Enough to pay off her debts, fix the roof, and keep Midnight Haven alive for years. Tears filled her eyes. Jake, I can't take this. He shook his head. You already did, weeks ago, when you gave us shelter. Outside, the bikers laughed, helping locals shovel snow, handing out blankets to travelers stranded on the highway. Jake looked around the diner, pride flickering in his gaze. We called it the Haven Ride, he said. Every year now, we'll come back, raise money for folks like you. For anyone who keeps the light on when the world goes dark. Sarah smiled through tears, her hand trembling over her heart. When night fell, the neon sign burned brighter than ever, glowing red and gold against the snow. Sarah stood by the window, watching as the last bike disappeared into the horizon. The storm had taken much from her. But it had also returned something she thought she'd lost forever, hope, and somewhere deep inside that hope, something beautiful had taken root, the seed of a miracle.